I'm going to start this by saying something most people won't like. For the average person, buying a house isn't a smart financial decision. It's a carefully engineered trap. And the reason people get angry when they hear that is simple. They don't want the truth. They want the illusion. I've spent decades watching ordinary people fall for the same scripted lie. Buy a home, settle down, lock yourself into a 30-year mortgage, and congratulations, you're now a responsible adult. Responsible? No. Predictable. And predictable people are easy to control. Banks don't want you wealthy. They want you compliant. They want you dependent. They want you paying interest for most of your adult life, smiling while you do it. A house, bought too early or for the wrong reasons, is the perfect financial shackle. It limits your mobility. It steals your optionality. It freezes your decisions. It kills your financial compounding right when you need it the most. But people defend it emotionally because admitting the truth is too painful. They were sold a dream that benefits everyone except themselves. I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to give you reality, the cold, hard version that actually protects your future. If you're young, ambitious, or still building your financial foundation, you need to hear this next part very carefully. Let's begin with the biggest lie in the entire real estate narrative. A house gives you stability. That's nonsense. A house gives you obligation. And people mistake obligation for stability because they're used to living inside cages. Real stability doesn't come from walls or a mortgage. Real stability comes from having money, margin, options, and the ability to adapt without panicking. But society trains you to believe the opposite. They want you anchored. They want you immobile. They want you working, paying taxes, and staying quiet. A mortgage helps with all three. I've watched thousands of people buy homes because they thought it would secure their life. Instead, it locked them into a single location, a single income stream, a single lifestyle, and a single set of financial obligations that never stop growing, and they call this stability. It's not. It's a self-inflicted trap disguised as maturity. Here's the truth most adults never admit. If your stability comes from something that can be taken from you, a job, a mortgage, a property, then you were never stable to begin with. You know what real stability looks like? Cash, savings, skills, mobility, low expenses, zero high-risk debt, the ability to walk away from anything that stops serving your life. That's stability. A 30-year financial leash isn't. Now, let's talk about the real problem. People buy houses before they've built the financial strength to afford unpredictability, and life is nothing but unpredictable. Lose your job? The bank doesn't care. Interest rates jump? The bank doesn't care. Unexpected repairs? The bank doesn't care. Property taxes spike? The government doesn't care. You need to relocate for a better opportunity? Your mortgage sure as hell doesn't care. So explain to me where the stability is. Show me which part of this looks like safety. You want the blunt version? Here it is. A house forces you to pretend your life is more stable than it actually is. And that lie is what ruins people financially. Your 20s and 30s are supposed to be flexible. You're supposed to chase opportunity, not avoid it. You're supposed to build wealth, not bury it under kitchen renovations. You're supposed to learn, adapt, relocate, grow, and pivot. A house kills all of that. It turns your life into a fixed point, and fixed points are easy to exploit. You become a perfect customer. Predictable income, predictable behavior, predictable spending. Banks love predictability. Weak people call it stability. I call it vulnerability. The inversion, my way of thinking, is simple. Before you commit to anything permanent, ask, what does this prevent me from doing that could make me wealthier, freer, and harder to break? When most people ask that question honestly, the illusion shatters. Because buying a house too early doesn't give you stability. It gives you fragility, disguised, decorated, and sold as the dream. And the moment life pushes back, even gently, you find out the truth. If you want to understand how the modern financial system keeps ordinary people stuck, you don't need conspiracy theories. You just need to study the monthly payment. People don't buy houses. They buy payments. And the banking system is designed to make those payments feel comfortable, even when they aren't. It's psychological engineering at its finest. Let me tell you something harsh. The monthly payment exists to trick you into thinking you can afford something you absolutely cannot. The bank's goal is not to help you own a home. The bank's goal is to figure out the maximum amount of money they can extract from you every single month without making you revolt. And people call this the American dream. I call it the perfect trap. When someone sits down with a mortgage lender, they're not asked, how much should you borrow? How much is safe? What amount allows you to build wealth? They're asked, how much can you pay each month? It's a predatory question disguised as guidance. Because when you frame the decision around a monthly number instead of the total cost, you numb the brain's ability to detect danger. You stop thinking about 30 years of interest. You stop thinking about taxes, insurance, repairs, maintenance, opportunity cost, mobility, risk. You focus on one deceptively small number. The monthly payment sedates your rational mind. The first thing I learned about debt was this. If someone is encouraging you to focus on the payment instead of the price, you're about to be screwed. Monthly payments rewire people's behavior. They force you to become predictable. And the institutions that profit from you, banks, governments, employers, love predictable citizens. Let me explain why. When you have a big monthly payment, you can't quit your job. You can't move cities. You can't take entrepreneurial risks. You can't invest aggressively. You can't survive downturns gracefully. You can't let your life breathe. You've sold your future flexibility for the illusion of now. And the result is a life lived in quiet financial desperation. I've seen young people stretch themselves to the absolute edge just so they can say they own something. They sign for a payment that eats 30 to 40% of their income. Then they spend the next decade trying not to drown. They don't just lose money, they lose optionality. They lose peace of mind. They lose their ability to adapt when the world shifts under their feet. And here's the dark secret nobody tells you. The bank wants you stressed, but not too stressed, trapped, but still paying, employed, but afraid to walk away. That's the sweet spot. That's where they make the most money. A person with a large mortgage doesn't argue with their boss. They don't take time to think. They don't make bold moves. They don't question the system. They work, they pay, they repeat. If that's not a form of engineered dependence, I don't know what is. Let me give you the inversion. The Munger way of turning the problem upside down. Before accepting a monthly payment, ask, what version of my future self will this force me to become? If the answer is less free, less flexible, more anxious, more fragile, more dependent, more predictable, more trapped, then saying yes is financial suicide disguised as maturity. A good financial decision expands your life. A mortgage taken too early shrinks it. People think ownership gives them power. But if ownership comes with a leash, it's not power. It's captivity. Let me leave you with a line most people won't understand until they live it. You don't control a life full of monthly payments. The payments control you, and that is exactly why the system loves them. Opportunity cost is the most important concept in wealth building and also the most ignored. People avoid it because it forces them to confront a painful truth. Every decision you make is stealing from a better decision you didn't make. And nothing steals more from people than buying a house at the wrong time. Here's what I want you to understand. A house doesn't just cost the price on the contract. It costs the future you forfeited by committing your money, your mobility, your attention, and your time to the wrong asset at the wrong moment. You can see the house. You can touch the walls. You can brag about the keys, but you can't see the lost opportunities. You can't see the wealth you never built. You can't see the compounding that never happened. You can't see the career move you didn't take. You can't see the business you never started. Opportunity cost is invisible, and that's why it's deadly. I've spent my entire life watching intelligent people sabotage themselves because they prioritized visible comfort instead of invisible compounding. Most people can handle direct losses, but they never recover from the fortune they never realized they missed. Let me tell you something only old age can teach you. The easiest way to stay poor is to lock your money into something that doesn't grow. The easiest way to get rich is to keep your money free until it finds something exceptional. That's why young people should be terrified of early home ownership, not because homes are inherently bad, but because the timing is. Your 20s and 30s are your compounding years, your acceleration years, your optionality years, your mobility years, your take big swings while the downside is small years. And what do most people do? They use that precious window to bury themselves under debt, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and a payment schedule that cannibalizes every dollar they could have invested elsewhere. Let me give you the simple math everyone avoids. Every $1 you put into a house too early isn't just $1 gone. It's the $10, $20, $50 that $1 would have become over time. You didn't buy a house. You bought the death of your compounding curve. People will tell you, but Charlie, my house will go up in value. Maybe, maybe not, but that's not the point. The point is this. A house grows slowly and demands constantly. Good investments grow aggressively and demand nothing. One steals your capital, the other multiplies it. You want the truth? A house is the slowest, most restrictive form of wealth building. Most people use it as a way to feel financially responsible while sabotaging their actual financial potential. Let me walk you through the inversion, because inversion has saved me more times than brilliance ever did. Before you buy something expensive, ask yourself, what would this money become if I didn't imprison it? That question alone could save you decades. People don't like thinking this way because it forces them to confront regret before they commit to it. It forces them to see that buying a house too early isn't an achievement. It's often a self-inflicted limitation. I've seen people work for 30 years thinking the house made them secure, only to reach their 50s wondering why they're not wealthy. Well, I'll tell you why. They traded exponential growth for emotional comfort. They traded mobility for walls. They traded opportunity for obligation. A house can make sense when you're already wealthy, when you've already captured the compounding, when your career is stable, your investments are growing, your habits are sound, and your opportunities no longer require mobility. But until then, buying a house is like planting your feet in concrete before the race has even started. Let me leave you with one sentence you'll never forget. The most expensive thing you will ever buy is the opportunity you never took. And for millions of people, that opportunity dies the moment they sign a mortgage. Debt is one of the most successful illusions ever invented. It looks harmless. It feels normal. And society treats it like a rite of passage, as if owing money for decades is simply what adults do. That's how so you know the system is working exactly as designed. Let me tell you the unfiltered truth. Debt is the enemy that pretends to be your friend. It gives you what you want today so it can take what you need tomorrow. I learned early in my life that debt doesn't just cost money. It costs control. It changes how you think. It changes the decisions you make. It changes the risks you're willing to take. It changes what you tolerate. It changes how much of your life you're forced to sacrifice. And that's why I avoided it like a plague. People lie to themselves about mortgages because the alternative, admitting they trapped themselves, is too painful. They call it good debt. They call it an investment. They call it equity building. No. It's a 30-year promise you made to a bank that doesn't care if your life falls apart. Let me give you a sentence most people never hear. Debt doesn't just reduce your freedom. It transfers your freedom to someone else. You think you own a home? Try missing a few payments. You'll find out who the real owner is. People don't understand how psychologically corrosive debt becomes over time. You wake up with it. You go to work because of it. You accept treatment you shouldn't accept because of it. You tolerate bosses you should have left years ago because of it. You stay in cities you hate because of it. You stop thinking independently because the monthly payment is always whispering in the background, don't take risks. Don't move. Don't change. Don't dream. Debt kills ambition. Quietly, slowly, perfectly. Let me tell you something from watching thousands of people across decades. When you owe money, you no longer make decisions. Your debt makes decisions for you. And that's the version of you the system wants. A person with debt is more compliant, more predictable, more fearful, more dependent, more controllable, less likely to challenge anything, less likely to walk away from a bad deal, a bad job, or a bad life. Debt is the great pacifier. This is why lenders act like your partner. They smile. They shake your hand. They congratulate you on buying your dream. They talk about smart leverage. They reassure you with charts and numbers and projections. But behind all that is one motive: extract as much money from your future as possible for as long as possible without killing you in the process. A mortgage isn't designed to help you own a home. It's designed to keep you paying for decades. Now, here's the part most people can't emotionally handle. The problem isn't that debt exists. The problem is that people take on debt before they have the psychological and financial strength to survive it. A house bought from weakness is a life sentence. A house bought from strength is an asset. This is why I tell people, if you need a mortgage to feel like an adult, you're not ready for a mortgage. You buy a house when you're financially stable, you're geographically stable, you're emotionally stable. You can survive disasters without panic. You can pay for it without stress. You don't need the bank's approval to feel legitimate. You don't need the house to feel successful. That's when debt becomes a choice instead of a chain. Most people reverse this equation. They take on debt because they think it will magically transform them into the person they wish they were. It won't. It will only expose the weaknesses they refuse to address. Let me give you the inversion, the Munger way of avoiding catastrophes long before they happen. Before taking on debt, imagine the worst-case scenario in brutal detail. If you can't survive it calmly, walk away. Your financial life depends not on how well you do when things go right, but on how little damage you suffer when things go wrong. Debt is catastrophic when the world shifts, and the world always shifts. One recession, one illness, one layoff, one unexpected expense, and the friendly loan becomes a hostile takeover. So remember this line. It will protect you more than you realize. You don't have to fear debt. You have to fear taking on debt before you earn the strength to carry it. That is how you stay free. That is how you stay rational. And that is how you keep your life from being owned by someone else's balance sheet. One of the greatest advantages you have when you're young is flexibility. And one of the greatest tragedies is how quickly people throw that advantage away, usually for a house they weren't ready for. Let me tell you something most people never understand until their life is already stuck. Your flexibility is worth far more than any property you can buy in your early years. But banks, agents, and society never tell you that. They want you stationary, predictable, local, locked into a pattern of consumption and payments. Mobility is the enemy of the system. People who can move are harder to control. People who can pivot don't become lifelong customers. People who can say no to anchors are harder to squeeze, and nothing anchors you more effectively than a house. I've watched this play out for decades. A young person gets a great job offer in a new city, but they can't take it. A new industry emerges, but they can't reposition in time. An opportunity appears, but moving would be too complicated. What's complicating it? The house, the mortgage, the illusion of permanence they trap themselves inside. Most people don't realize the true cost of a house isn't financial. It's psychological. Let me explain. When you own a home, you stop thinking in terms of possibility. You start thinking in terms of maintenance, obligation, upkeep, local relationships, neighborhood norms, schools, taxes, insurance, renovations, resale value, timing. You're no longer building a life. You're managing an asset you barely own. And here's the worst part. You begin editing your dreams to fit the walls of a house. People shrink their ambitions because moving feels inconvenient. They tolerate bad jobs because the mortgage needs paying. They endure stagnation because selling would feel like failure. They stay in cities that no longer serve them because relocation is too disruptive. What kind of life is that? It's not a life. It's a box with sentimental attachments. Let me give you the truth. Nobody says out loud, a home should serve your growth. If it traps you, you bought it at the wrong time. People say, but Charlie, I want roots. Good, but roots only make sense after you've found the right soil. Young people plant roots first and look for soil later. They anchor themselves before knowing which city, which market, which career, which environment will maximize their life. That's backwards. Your 20s and 30s are your exploration years. You should be experimenting, relocating, failing fast, learning quickly, and positioning yourself where opportunity is richest, not where your mortgage happens to be. Let me put it bluntly. If you buy a house before you know who you are, the house will decide for you. It narrows your identity. It shrinks your world. It tells you, just stay here, just settle, just maintain, just keep paying. And people call that starting their life. I call it shrinking their possibilities. Look at the most successful people you admire. Entrepreneurs, investors, creators. How many of them became great by staying rooted early? How many grew by staying fixed? How many unlocked opportunity by refusing to move? Very few. You don't expand your life by staying still. You expand it by moving toward opportunity, not waiting for opportunity to move toward you. Let me give you the inversion, because inversion protects you from stupidity better than intelligence ever will. Ask not, what can this house give me? Ask, what will this house prevent me from doing? If the answer includes moving, seizing opportunity, taking risks, changing careers, exploring new markets, escaping a bad situation, adapting to macroeconomic shifts, reinventing your identity, then the house is not a milestone, it's a trap. And here's the final truth about flexibility. It compounds just like money does. Lose it early, and the cost follows you for life. People think the biggest risk is renting too long. They're wrong. The biggest risk is committing too early. You shouldn't anchor your life until you've built a life worth anchoring. A house isn't supposed to freeze you. It's supposed to support you. But most people get it backwards, and they spend decades paying for a decision they made in a moment of insecurity, pressure, or emotional impulse. Flexibility is freedom. A house bought too soon is the slow death of that freedom. And once you lose flexibility, the world stops bending for you. Let me give you the most counterintuitive truth I ever learned about money, stability, and home ownership. The right time to buy a house is when you don't need one. Not when society tells you it's time, not when your emotions crave validation, not when your parents pressure you. Only when you're already financially unshakable. This goes against everything you've been taught, and that's why it works. People buy homes because they think the house will stabilize their life. They think the house will fix their uncertainty. They think the house will protect them. But it doesn't. A house doesn't stabilize your life. You stabilize your life. Through discipline, through savings, through skill, through mobility, through wise decisions, through avoiding stupidity. People get trapped because they buy houses for the wrong reason. They buy from weakness instead of strength. Let me show you the difference. Buying from weakness means I want to feel like an adult. I'm tired of renting. Everyone my age has one. My parents expect it. I want stability. I want to stop feeling behind. I want people to take me seriously. Every one of those motives is emotional, and emotion is the enemy of wealth. Buying from strength means you have strong savings, you have job security and mobility. You have a stable career trajectory. You have capital working for you. You have no high-interest debt. You have a large margin of safety. You can weather disasters without panic. You choose the house. The house doesn't choose your life. That's the difference between ownership as freedom and ownership as imprisonment. Let me tell you a truth most people never realize until it's too late. A house is only a blessing when it no longer has the power to hurt you. If buying a house puts your finances on a tightrope, you're not buying a home. You're buying anxiety. If buying a house limits your mobility, you're shrinking your future. If buying a house consumes your capital, you're killing your compounding. If buying a house forces you to stay in a job you hate, you're selling your freedom. And if buying a house requires emotional justification, you're already in danger. Here's how I evaluated major decisions in my life, and it's a principle that will protect you from more disasters than you can count. A smart financial move doesn't just look good when everything goes right. It survives when everything goes wrong. That's the test. That's the filter. That's what separates rational adults from emotional gamblers. Most people never apply this test to home ownership. They buy a house believing the next 30 years will look like the last 6 months. That's delusional confidence. Life doesn't move in straight lines. There are recessions, layoffs, divorces, illnesses, market crashes, inflation spikes, family emergencies, unexpected opportunities, unpredictable disasters. If one disruption can collapse your financial life, you aren't ready for a mortgage. You're ready for humility. But here's the paradox, the part most people never grasp. If you wait until you're truly stable to buy a house, the house becomes irrelevant to your stability. It doesn't define you. It doesn't control you. It doesn't weigh you down. It doesn't shrink your life. It doesn't absorb your dreams. It just sits quietly in the background while your real wealth, the wealth in your skills, your investments, your freedom, continues to grow. At that point, the house becomes what it was always supposed to be, a tool, not a cage. Let me give you a line that summarizes the entire philosophy. Buy a house when it can't limit your life, not when you feel pressured to prove you're living one. If you buy too early, the house owns you. If you buy at the right time, you own the house, and everything else in your life stays free. Most people never achieve that freedom because they don't have the patience to buy intelligently. They want the emotional reward now. They want the social validation now. They want to look successful now. But the world punishes impatience more than it punishes ignorance. You want to know the real secret to wealth? The ability to delay gratification long enough for your rational decisions to compound into freedom. Those who can't delay gratification become servants of the payments they rushed into. Those who can delay gratification eventually buy everything on their terms, calmly, wisely, without for us fear. The house isn't the victory. Your ability to choose the right moment is the victory. And that's a skill most people never develop because they never learn how to think for themselves. Let me leave you with one final line, one you should replay before any big financial decision. If you wait until you don't need something to buy it, you will always buy it correctly. That's the Munger way. It's not glamorous. It's not emotional. It's not exciting. But it's the only approach that actually works. In every market, in every economy, in every era, and in every real life that isn't fueled by delusion.